Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The Browns are back in West Virginia for the start of training camp, and so am I. After reporting to Berea early in the week and having a walkthrough Wednesday, the team flew down Thursday and practiced for about 45 minutes as they build up to putting on pads next week. It's been a newsy few days with injury updates, an Amari Cooper contract resolution, and Kevin Stefanski announcing a play calling decision. Here to discuss, as always, is Dave Chudowsky of the WKYC Morning News. Hey, Chud.
Scott, that was well written.
Thanks,
Well
bud.
done, buddy. That was really good. It just occurred to me too a couple weeks ago that you even told me you wrote out the intro.
I did. It took me about 35 seconds to write that out today.
Well done. Hey, it's tough to memorize all that stuff.
Oh,
But
there's
now,
no way.
hey, what's crazy is, I mean, how many times we talked over the last few weeks of how quickly camp would approach and we'd be here and football season would be here. Here we go, huh?
Yeah, I know. And, it may sound weird, but I dread it for a little bit because it's the end of my summer, right? Golf season gets cut short a little bit. But once you get into it, it's cool, right? We got to watch football practice yesterday, which I enjoy. So yeah, we're into this, and before you know it, we'll be in preseason, and before you know it, we'll be at the regular season, right? So the train has left the station.
That's right. The mind's a funny thing, right? It's the anticipation of the event, but then once you get to the event, you're in it and you enjoy it and you love it.
Right,
And
right.
you do a great job. Great job on social media yesterday. I was following along, so that was great. And obviously, a lot of topics to hit. So that's why we wanted to get this in here as we head into day number two. We're recording this on Friday morning. I guess number one, just kind of set the scene. What's it like down there right now?
It's interesting. Like weather-wise, it was cloudy yesterday, a little cloudy today, a little sticky. But not nearly as hot as it was yet last year. I mean, I think it felt like it was upper 80s, 90s all year last year when we were down here, and it was much cooler than that yesterday, probably, I don't know, 80, 82. Um, you see all the guys back at the same place that they were last year, right? There's that one Greenbrier. It's the fields out there right below the highway. There's a state trooper stationed on the highway to make sure nobody's whatever, I guess, watching practice from above or, trying to do anything suspicious. And it's yesterday we talked to Stefanski, we talked to Amari Cooper, we talked to Denzel Ward. I think we're going to get Deshaun Watson and Myles Garrett today. Um,
Ooh.
it's going to be. I think it'll be front loaded. I think early in this trip down here, you're going to get some big interviews. We don't,
Mhm.
I'm not at liberty to give all of them, but I think we're going to have some big names talking early. I saw Jimmy Haslam down here yesterday.
Okay.
We got to the Greenbrier, the actual resort. I mean, they practice on the resort, but it's not like in the resort, right? It's you go down a different road. Got to the actual resort last night. Looked at the golf course, and they're setting up for a live tournament. Um, Looked at the 18th green, and I had seen it last year, but it must have been too dark. I didn't notice it. There's a horseshoe in the middle of the 18th green at the Greenbrier course. It's pretty cool.
No, excellent.
Yeah,
Now, refresh everyone's memory. Fans cannot attend, right? I mean,
right.
this is all private.
Yeah, no fans until they get back to Berea a week from Sunday. Is the first of 6 practices in Berea. But yeah, it's just the team and their support staff and that kind of thing.
How long's the drive?
I want to say 5.5. I stopped to
Yeah.
pick up Chris from the Beacon Journal. He was in Canton, so I think from my house picking him up, we made one stop. It was just under 6 hours.
Okay. Now, I listened to Kevin Stefanski. Obviously, you were there. I think it was your question. Were you the one that asked him about his camp message?
Yes.
Okay. I thought that was a pretty good answer. Wait, just kind of summarize. Was it what you were hoping to hear?
Yeah, I think I ask him that every year just because I'm really curious about that, what a coach says to kick off a new season. And I don't think he usually gives great or insightful answers, but I thought yesterday he was okay. And he talked about, everybody talks about going to the Super Bowl, but, it's all about what you do to get you to the Super Bowl. And he said it's a new year. Um, you can't rely on anything else. Things are going to be different this year than they were last year, than they were the year before. So I did think he gave kind of more than I'm used to him giving there.
So he came right out of the gates. You guys didn't even have to ask him. And I love that this topic has just been taken care of right out of the beginning. And he said to you guys, he told you right away, he's going to call the plays.
Yeah. And, it feels like in the past it's dragged on longer than the beginning of training camp. And I could be wrong, and maybe not every year, right? Because once he had established himself, I think we assumed he would be the play caller last year. I don't remember it being an issue last year, but I know the first year when he was coach, maybe in the second year when he was coach, it was, well, we're thinking about it. And it felt like it was longer into the preseason. And I just don't think he wanted to deal with it anymore. And he'd made up his mind. And he said he's going to do it. He's going to continue to call plays. And we've talked about this, Chud. I think that's the right move. I think he's done a really good job calling the plays. To me, what was interesting about it, and he preys on his coaches, and it's not just a one-man show, right? He relies on his coaching staff when he does, even when he's calling plays, right? They set the game plan while he's on the sideline. There's other voices in his ear. He just has the final say on the calls. But he also said that one of the factors was there's so many new coaches on that offensive staff, right? We talked about there's new line coach, new tight ends coach, new running backs coach, and new coordinator in Ken Dorsey. And with all these new coaches, that it gives him, I think, a sense of comfort that he's calling the plays. Like it's one less change, And on game day, it's going to be different. Instead of Bill Callahan, there's Andy Dickerson. And maybe this makes the transition easier, is him calling the plays. And that if it were a more established coaching staff, even with the change to coordinator, maybe he would have considered it different. I think he probably still calls the plays because he's so good at it. But he did say that was a factor, and I thought that was worth noting.
How many plays do they have prepared at the beginning of the game, would you say?
That's a good question. I don't know. Off the top of my head, Chad, I'm going like 80, and I'm sure their practiced package for that week is smaller. Maybe it's 40 to 50, but if you're getting a bunch of third and longs, you got to go deeper into your playbook, right? Or maybe you practice 5 goal line plays and you wind up having 12 goal line plays in a game, so you have to go deeper into your goal line package, right? Stuff like that. So that's a good question. Maybe I'll try to pull Kevin aside one of these days down here and ask him that. But I would go 80 to 100, and maybe you hone in on the game plans actually, I don't know, 40 to 50, because they run, they probably run 60, 80 plays a game, but there's duplicates, right? We see them run the same play. Sometimes they just flip the field when they do it, go from right to left or whatever. So that would be my guess.
How many would you say are scripted for the first series or the beginning of the game?
Yeah, I think it's usually around 15.
15.
Yeah, it's a scripted. Now, that's something to ask about this year too, because Watson in a podcast after the season complained about the scripted play. So we'll see if and I think, I think from a coach, you like the scripted plays. It gives you some comfort. You practice those. Maybe Kevin Stefanski will be less rigid about it this year, about the script. But I just don't think you go away from the script completely. Like, that gives you something to practice. It gives you something to hang your head on.
I guess my point is Dorsey will have, you have to believe, a lot of input on that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, first of all, he's the guy running the meetings, running the practices. Not that Stefanski's not there and involved, but it's on the coordinator to do that. Alex Van Pelt did that. You manage the offensive staff, right? That falls on the coordinator. And then, yeah, he's number 2 when it comes to designing the game plan. All right, other coaches are involved, but it's Stefanski, and it was Van Pelt. Now it's Stefanski and Dorsey will sit down and come up with the game plan. They'll come up with the script. Yeah, it's the play caller gets a lot of attention, and I think rightfully so. But it's a team effort to figure out what plays you're going to call.
So bottom line, to seal up this, you approve of him calling the plays. You like the idea that he's going to continue, because there's many people that feel that the head coach, it can be a distraction. You should be monitoring more of the other duties that the head coach needs to do, clock management, just the overall job of a head coach.
Yes, I think he should call plays. I think he's good at it, and I understand that that is the concern. I just don't think that's been an issue in his 4 years. And, maybe you can point to a couple isolated incidents, but I don't think overall. And he has strong coordinators in Jim Schwartz and Bubba Ventrone, where I don't think he needs to be more involved in defensive special teams.
Yeah. All right. The other big story, which would have been the lead here,
Yeah,
had not been for Kevin Stefanski. I think I wanted to get that out of the way first.
yeah.
It was also fresh information from yesterday. We learned about Amari Cooper a couple days earlier, but you did talk with Cooper yesterday. Were you surprised, or your reaction? That's another thing too, that this won't be weighing over anyone at camp. He's here. He's not holding out, or whatever the correct word would be.
Right.
I mean, he was under contract, but the bottom line is this is definitely a distraction that they don't have to worry about. So this is a really good thing the Browns were able to come to an agreement here to restructure the deal with Cooper.
Well, yeah, I completely agree with that, Chud. Now, Cooper said he would not have called out. Now, it's easy to say that when there's a resolution to the contract and a restructuring of the contract, but I believe him. He said it was hard for him to skip minicamp, because in his 10 years, he's never done that, skipped OTAs or minicamp. But yeah, you don't want that lingering. It can be a distraction. Look what's going on in Dallas, and there's other teams across the league that have these holdout situations, right? Trent Williams with the 49ers. It becomes an issue. If you miss practice part of training camp, I feel like the odds of you having an injury, any player having an injury when they come back from a holdout, is greater. So yeah, I think it's really important that the Browns figured out a way to work this out. Now, I did want to ask you, I was listening to, I want to say, Sirius NFL radio, and they thought the Browns caved, and the Cooper was under contract for 2024. They didn't need to add the $5 million in incentives that they added. I see it differently. I think Andrew Berry did the right thing by finding a resolution. I think that was a compromise that's works for both sides. And I don't feel like he just caved. And it was incentives. He just didn't give him a raise. I don't know how easy the incentives are to earn, but Cooper made a point of saying, "Hey, now I go out and earn them." So I don't think it's just he wrote him an extra check for $5 million bucks. And I think it was important, and Cooper is such an important part of this team and this offense that you had to get it done. That's my opinion. Do you think that Barry caved, quote unquote, caved?
No, I don't think so. I think this was a good resolution because, and I went back, Scott, yesterday, and if it was, I don't know, not our last podcast, but the one before where we discussed this, and I went back because I wanted to hear what we said about it, fresh in my memory of it, and we were almost spot on. Not really, because you had mentioned you did not think he should get a raise,
Yeah.
and he really didn't, right? Because, like you said, it's incentive based, correct?
It's 5 million incentives. They didn't add, to the salary. They didn't extend him. This is still the last year of
Hmm.
his contract.
Yeah, you felt that giving a raise would be a bad idea, and then we just debated and talked about how it was kind of a tough scenario because Cooper is looking for a longer extension, but do the Browns want to do that? Yet at the same point, you understood where he was coming from as well. So I think this is a good resolution for both sides. You're not giving him this massive contract. He was already under contract. Everyone seems to be happy with it. Now, I will say this: I did listen to Cooper a little bit yesterday, and obviously you were right there. I feel like he's okay with it and feels like it works, but he would have liked to have gotten more. Would you agree?
Yeah, I thought there were a couple things. Um, he said, and a lot of times players say, like I said before, and you're like, well, you didn't really say that before. So I think it was the last question, and I asked him something about the receiver market going through the roof. And inside there, he goes, well, I was expecting to, he goes, like I said, I was expecting to get an extension. And I reread the transcript and listened to the interview. He never said it earlier. So he expected that an extension would come from the holdout of minicamp, right? In this whole situation, he expected an extension. And then when that didn't happen, then he settled for the extra incentives. And what was important to him was the guaranteed money got shifted forward into his contract, right? So he wasn't, it felt like it was going to happen automatically, that he would get the guaranteed money, right? Or the money. Like he's $20 million in 2024. All you have to do is be on the roster at week 1, and all that money becomes guaranteed if you're a veteran like he is. But he was worried about, man, what if I get hurt in practice in training camp, and for some reason they decide to save that money, save that salary cap space, save the money and the space, and cut him. Now, it's really, to me, it feels unrealistic. That wasn't going to happen, but that was a concern for his. So one of the things that happened in this restructuring is the Browns moved that money forward, or guaranteed that money. So that was a load off his mind. So he gets the guaranteed money, which he probably would have gotten anyway, and then he gets these incentives. But that's him settling because he wanted an extension, and he talked about it. He wants to be here long term. He wants to finish his career here, but now that's a question mark because all they did was restructure this final year of his contract.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder if at his age they're going to want to sign him to a long-term deal, making the big bucks that these other receivers are making. And that's kind of what we talked about 2 podcasts ago. So I guess I'm going to ask you this. I mean, do you think this is it for Amari Cooper in Cleveland?
That's a great question. I think they have to see how he plays this year, Chud. I don't think they want to pay. He's 30 now, so next year would be 31, right? I don't think you want to pay a 31, 32-year-old guy $25 million a year. Having said that, if he plays like he did last year, maybe you do. Maybe if he has another Pro Bowl 1,250-yard season, then yeah, I think you're the Browns, you sign him, and then it's a question of would he agree to a 1-year deal? Would he agree to a 2-year deal? Right? And the problem then is you open it up to the rest of the league. And I know he said he wants to come back, but you get a chance at free agency, you get a chance to get a big contract or a longer term contract, right? So but maybe if he has a great first 10 games, you lock it in October, November, December, and then you avoid that. So I don't know if it's 50-50, but I think there's a chance he comes back. But I think it's far from guaranteed given his age, given the contract situation, given the fact that the Browns are paying everybody, or a lot of guys on the roster, a lot of money, right? They have to figure that out moving forward.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. I guess I would need to hear the whole conversation about them saying the Browns caved on Sirius. I don't see it that way at all. I guess I need to really analyze it a little bit more. But I actually think the Browns got the better end of this deal. You agree, right?
I do. And I mean, I think their point is they didn't have to. They didn't have to do anything, right? They didn't have to give him this $5 million in incentives that they gave him. And let's assume he's going to be able to earn those incentives, right? They could have played hardball and said, show up, practice, play, you're under contract. Now, I don't know if that's realistic. I mean, it is realistic. You could do that. But
yeah,
I don't know if that's the right way to operate maybe I was going to say in today's NFL, right? Like, and especially with a guy like Cooper, he's a team leader. He's been great for his 2 years.
Yeah.
He's really valuable, right? All those things make you want to work it out with him. I don't feel like they caved or capitulated to Amari Cooper. I think they just found a reasonable compromise that doesn't set a bad precedent, right? I think one of the concerns would be anybody under contract says, hey, I want to raise and you got to give it to him. I think Cooper's a special situation that it's not like they're going to be lining up outside Andrew Berry's door.
Yeah, and I like it too because we already don't know when Nick Chubb's going to be back, and you need these star players, and now we don't have the headache here of a holdout, so I'm fine with it. But so that leads me in 2 more topics here, and then we're going to let you go because you got to get out to practice. Let's talk injury updates. Just kind of run through, how we're doing health wise.
Yeah, I mean, there's some significant injuries to start camp, and 2, I want to say, surprise ones were Dalvin Tomlinson, the D tackle. He's having surgery today, arthroscopic knee surgery. He'll miss probably all of training camp. The hope is he gets back for week 1. He practiced in minicamp, but I think it's a wear and tear. He showed up for training camp. They do the exams, right? The physicals, and they said, no, we should probably have this. You should probably have this done. And Petonio had a scope during last season, right? So like guys can come back and play, but he's missing weeks, right? And then the other one is Greg Newsome, the second, the cornerback. While he was working out between minicamp and training camp, blew out a hamstring and had surgery. Already had surgery. So, it's bad when you have to have hamstring surgery, right? Like guys pull their hamstrings and strain their hamstrings all the time and even tear them, right? I mean, that's what a strain is. It's just the severity of the tear. But for him to have surgery means it's a bad injury. And he's kind of on the same timeline as Tomlinson is. The hope is he'll be back week 1 for the opener against the Cowboys, but it's not guaranteed. And those are 2 starters from, your number 1 ranked defense. And then you have Nick Chubb still not ready to practice. He was working on the side yesterday. Tackles, Jack Conklin and Jed Wills Jr. I think they're gonna miss a couple more weeks at least. Or I don't know if it's a week or 2, right? But it's not immediate or it's not imminent that they're going to be back practicing. They're still working off the surgeries they had last year. Trying to think though. I think those are the main ones. Cam Mitchell, who's the backup nickel behind Newsome. He passed his physical, but he was on the side yesterday. Same with Garrett and Njoku. Those felt like just they're being real careful with them. But yeah, I mean, so that's, those are some big guys. If you go the 2 tackles, Chubb, Tomlinson, and Newsome, so they're not whole to begin. But, if you get back week 1 and it's a long season, right? But it's kind of a rough way to open camp, I would say.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, last question brought to you by Petrak Pebbles, everyone's favorite breakfast cereal. We need our Deshaun Watson update. How do you look?
Yeah, you know what? He looked fine. He looked fine to end minicamp. I thought he looked the same. It was a short practice. What stood out to, we were watching so much with Watson. It felt like he was in every drill, but then there were some drills where he would go, let's say, 15 reps without taking one, right? It was Jameis Winston and Huntley and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So he's still on a pitch count, which is fine. That's expected. I asked Stefanski if it was going to stay on the every other day schedule that he had in the offseason. And Stefanski said, no, it'll be more than that. So I don't know if it's 2 out of 3 days or 3 out of 5 days, right? But it's going to be more. And Stefanski did say that Watson will participate in team drills from day 1. And he didn't do any of that in the offseason, right? OTAs, minicamp. He was not in the 11-on-11s. He only got into the 7-on-7 drills in minicamp. So that's a difference. He's in the team drills. It's just part of this progression. Like I said, we're supposed to talk to Watson today. We'll get an update, but he said he feels great. We talked to him like a week ago at his 7-on-7 tournament. And then the other note on Watson is Stefanski hasn't decided if Watson will play in the preseason. And it's an interesting discussion. We can talk about it more, right, as we go on because we're not to the preseason yet. But it's an interesting discussion because he hasn't played a lot, but you also want to keep him healthy.
That was going to be my follow-up question there about the preseason, and you got to it. So there you go. All right. Well, I think that was a lot to pack in there, Scott. Get out there and enjoy day number 2, and we'll talk again early next week, I'm guessing.
Yeah, for sure. Perfect. I'm glad we could get this in, Chud. Good to talk to you, buddy. Thanks everybody for listening. Follow on Twitter or X. I'll be posting stuff in the Greenbrier all day, and I'll have the stories. You can read all my work at brownzone.com. And this has been another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast. Thanks a lot.